what is a mangrove and why do they matter in terms of kind of a community-led management and restoration program. The big thing really, there's a whole discussion around kind of a mangroves, that they're forests, so are they terrestrial, but also they are homes to fish, so are they marine? And the answer really is they're coastal intertidal trees. And these trees have adapted to thrive in harsh conditions that most trees could never survive. So they're located along coasts in proximity to the equator, as you can see on the map. And they tolerate salt water and low oxygen soil and can handle the rise and fall of tides, which means that these forests are flooded at least twice a day. And given their unique characteristics and location, they're incredibly valuable. They're productive ecosystems for people, nature, and climate. So that triple win, providing a number of critical ecosystem services. So according to a report by the IUCN, these ecosystem services are worth up to 800 billion US dollars per year. And for nature, marine species flock to mangroves, with their roots providing critical nursery habitat for juveniles of thousands of fish species. And that's everything from kind of 1-inch gobies to 10-foot sharks. In terms of climate, they capture and store huge amounts of CO2 in above ground and below ground biomass, including in the soils. And this can be kind of anywhere between 3 and 5 times more than that of tropical forests, which are recognised for their huge carbon storage potential. And mangroves support around 120 million people worldwide. So they provide natural coastal protection against severe storm events, and utilising mangrove restoration as a nature-based solution for coastal defence is 5 times more effective than grey infrastructure. So this push for nature-based solutions really is critical. And mangroves also provide a valuable source of timber and fuel wood, and also support traditional livelihoods such as small-scale fisheries and timber harvesting, as well as tourism, with over 2,000 mangrove-related attractions globally. So it is quite impressive. However, mangroves do face a number of anthropogenic and natural threats. So as much as 50% of mangrove forests have been lost in the last 50 years, and a further 26% of the remaining mangrove forests worldwide are degraded. And this comes from pressures from unregulated harvesting, intensified fishing, and these are the primary threats, with demand for building materials, fuel wood, and seafood increasing as populations grow rapidly. And consequently, these habitats and their provision of ecosystem services are being lost at an alarming rate. In fact, there are some studies that say that disturbed mangrove forests have 20 to 40% less biodiversity in terms of abundance than undisturbed mangrove forests. And the important thing here really is human activity is destroying these ecosystems. But by changing the way that we interact with nature, we can also become a force for good. So restoration and effective local management of mangroves can reduce the rate of deforestation, improve local livelihoods, prevent carbon emissions, and also aid the recovery of these important habitats. And this is where the Blue Forest Initiative comes in. So the programme focuses on Madagascar and Indonesia. And as you can see from the two maps on the presentation, both of these countries are vital for mangrove forests and coastal communities. So these communities are among the millions worldwide who rely on mangroves to survive. And particularly Indonesia has the largest extent of mangrove cover and is most impacted by human-driven pressures. And also Madagascar, it has really quite large restoration potential, but also importantly, it's the poorest country in the world that's not in conflict. And mangrove deforestation and degradation in Madagascar and Indonesia is driven primarily by a lack of land and tenure rights and management techniques. And these would enable local communities to invest in sustainable long-term use of fisheries and or alternative livelihoods supported by mangroves. And also a limited value for the diverse ecosystem services that mangrove habitats provide. So what Blue Forest does is it addresses these drivers by working with local communities, the private sector, and national governments to establish improved livelihoods and explore green business opportunities. And these are underpinned by sustainable mangrove forestry and fisheries management, which are two incredibly important components to this programme. So the programme directly benefits coastal communities by improving climate resilience and adaptation capacity. And this is ensured through sustainable long-term management and conservation of endangered marine biodiversity and mangrove habitats. So the programme itself, reducing mangrove deforestation and increasing climate resilience are the overarching impacts. But how this is done is absolutely fascinating. So Blue Forest works with local communities, placing them at the centre of conservation efforts, and they embed the diversification of livelihoods, community health, and women's empowerment into the programme model. So I have actually provided detailed case studies at the end of the presentation. For you to look over in your own time if you are interested. But given time constraints, I'm just going to give a very quick overview of kind of how these components work together to achieve the triple win. So as you can see, there's 5 components to the programme. We have forestry management, blue carbon, small-scale fisheries management and improvement, livelihoods diversification, and community health and women's empowerment. So in terms of livelihoods, the programme looks to benefit 86,000 people, and it does this by working with state and non-state actors to identify, pilot and implement livelihood interventions for local communities. So apiculture and also aquaculture, including seaweed cultivation and sea cucumber farming, are key sustainable livelihoods that reduce mangrove deforestation by providing communities with an alternative way to generate income. And also in this past year with COVID, we have seen how valuable livelihood diversification can be to weathering crises, which can have huge economic and health implications. So, for example, when wet fish markets closed, the programme was able to adapt to push forward kind of fish drying and smoking instead, in order to kind of not lose stock and b still encourage a income to come to communities who were being impacted by the closure of those markets. In terms of forestry management and blue carbon, this looks to protect 180,000 hectares of mangrove forest and deliver 7.7 million tonnes of CO2 savings. And this component focuses on conservation agreements for sustainable use of mangroves, and it establishes robust monitoring and enforcement, and also monetizes the carbon storage value of mangroves to increase the climate resilience of these coastal communities. So really getting involved in the voluntary carbon market. And these agreements, particularly for forestry management, are drafted and managed by community associations and federations. And these are supported by Blue Ventures, who is the delivery partner for the programme, through the capacity building and technical assistance. But these associations and federations are led by the communities themselves. And also fisheries management and improvement. It establishes replicable frameworks for sustainable small-scale fisheries management. And this includes kind of gear restrictions or periodic closures of fishing grounds. So in particular, one really successful intervention has been the temporary closure of fishing grounds, particularly for octopus. And this enables stock to recover. So octopus are incredibly fast-growing species, and they can double in weight every month. So the economic benefits from increased catch once the fishing grounds reopen outweigh the costs of foregone catches during the closures. And these trade-offs are mitigated further when paired with the diversification of livelihoods. And finally, in terms of community health and women's empowerment, this integrates community health services, in particular family planning, with mangrove management efforts. So supporting communities in such a multi-sectoral way has wide-ranging benefits, and these can go beyond community health. So they have seen advances in gender equality, particularly in local marine resource management, and this is thanks to the gradual elimination of barriers to community participation. So ultimately, when women are in better health, they have more time, they're better able to earn a livelihood, and they feel more empowered to demonstrate longer term thinking. So this combination of strategies, which is deployed by Blue Ventures, is predicted to be worth over £49.5 million over 20 years. And the transformational impact of these models cannot be understated. So the program is looking to have kind of over 99 additional sites implementing their proved and tested models. And to date, they are already exceeding that, and the program is always already only halfway completed. So it really is impressive. But kind of going on to this lovely diagram I have here. So this shows how Blue Ventures multi-sectoral model interacts in kind of a perpetual cycle of benefits. So just as kind of one example, wildlife benefits can be harnessed not only through increased stability and health of mangrove forest ecosystems, but also future ecotourism, which encourages alternative livelihoods and thus a reduction in deforestation, as well as healthier mangrove ecosystems and improved provision of ecosystem services. So the program itself kind of exemplifies the need for a really holistic and integrated approach to mangrove protection and restoration, particularly if programs such as this are to be transformational and sustainable, and provide continued benefits long after programs have closed. So really to kind of wrap up, hopefully I've kind of shown in this very quick overview kind of how mangrove protection and restoration, which places communities at the centre, has huge transformational potential for nature-based solutions, and also how shifting human activity within these ecosystems can make a huge difference to the health of the world's mangrove forests. So I'm just going to finish by saying that there's a huge potential to include mangrove conservation in countries' NDCs to address climate change, and this can be done in a way that benefits the triple win. So people, nature, and climate can all benefit from mangrove restoration and protection, particularly when it is community led